Thanks for coming. My name's John Backus. I'm the product manager on LayOut. Are any of you using LayOut now? Okay. You don't count. I mean, you count, but he's on the QA team. Okay, well, what I was going to try to do today is go from start to finish building a presentation in LayOut. And I guess I should also ask, is there anyone in the room who has never tried LayOut? Okay, cool. Quite a few people. So I'll start maybe with a little introduction to what LayOut is. Are there folks in here that are not SketchUp Pro users? Do all of you have access to the beta? No? Okay. All right. Cool. A few more people. Hi, Fred. Okay, so LayOut was conceived of as a presentation tool for SketchUp users. It's the paper space analog to SketchUp's model space. And you know, we talked to a lot of people that are using SketchUp. Everybody thinks about SketchUp all the time because that's where your modeling is being done, and you know, that's where a lot of attention gets paid. But we found by talking to most professional SketchUp users that at some point they were taking their SketchUp models, putting them in a page layout program, putting a title block on, sending them to Photoshop for post-processing, sending them to Illustrator for a little diagrammatic markup. Something like that was always happening before clients actually saw the SketchUp model. And in some cases, you know, I know people are presenting directly from SketchUp and doing fly-throughs and walkthroughs and all that kind of stuff. But we thought that it was important that we come up with some kind of a tool that helps you build those design presentation documents that I think everybody is kind of doing at some point or another. And what do I mean by that? This is a small format print, but you know, plans, sections. I'll go into this in a minute, but you know, when you go to a meeting, it's kind of comforting to have a piece of paper in your hand that you can leave behind. So that's what LayOut's for. And so we built LayOut around SketchUp models, first and foremost. So the idea is that you have a page, and you can put your SketchUp model in the page. You can orient the model in a view that makes sense, an orthographic view or a perspective view or whatever. You can build title blocks. You can throw a couple of notes on. You can mark up the drawing a little bit. And you can build multi-page documents. This is the kind of thing that we hope people are going to ultimately be building with LayOut. Some of you are already doing it. LayOut is technically still in beta, and I know it's got some rough edges. You're going to see me run into them. I hope that you will stop me at any point and point out a rough edge that you think is particularly onerous. And I'm, you know, actively accepting feedback on this product, and really I'm very interested in making it as good as it can possibly be. So we've been in beta for about 17 months. It's a pretty long time. We have not been sitting idle back in Boulder eating waffles in the morning and all those great Google things. So we've been working on it, but I'm unfortunately not going to be able to show you any of that today. So, and I should also say that I'm showing you LayOut right now. So this is a full screen presentation mode, which is part of the product. You can also take these documents, make PDF files, things like that. Okay, so I want to look at how much of a design presentation we can build in about 30 minutes, okay, with some minor cheating, and I'll explain that in a second. And this is the document I want to build. It's the one I was holding up on paper here. And let me just show you what's in that. Okay. So this is a title page, and I've got this SketchUp model. I've actually got only one SketchUp model in this whole document. So all of the drawings are generated from that one model. So there's a title page. There are pages like this one I showed you before. Orthographics. Now this is a scaled plan, half-inch scale. Roof plan, foundation plan. I think you get the idea. So here's front elevation, back elevation, side elevation, a section drawing, and a sheet of details. So I'm going to generate all of these from one SketchUp model. And I think that's the fundamental benefit of working in 3D. Even if you're going to present in 2D, if you have a full 3D model, you have one representation of your design that you keep up to date, that you iterate on. And all of the drawings are just pulled off of that 3D model. I think that's the fundamental benefit of working in 3D. I suppose also, if you're working in 3D, then you're probably thinking in a more complete way about a three-dimensional object that you're ultimately going to build. But anyway, so this is what we're going to build. Are any questions about that? Is this a document that looks familiar to you guys, or a kind of document that looks familiar?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's see if we can build it. So I'm going to start with a new layout document. Layout's got a small collection of templates that we ship with the product. These are by no means the only ones that you can use. No doubt every one of you has a standard in your office or in your personal practice or whatever that's the way you like to present drawings. We can't match that, so we give you some examples. You can make your own very easily, but I'm going to start with this one. In fact, that was one of the most frequently asked questions the last time I ran the session was, how do I get my firm's title block from AutoCAD, whatever, into layout? And I'll just preemptively say the best way to do that is to draw it again. Chances are it's a pretty simple thing to draw. So anyway, we'll get to that. But okay. Let me just close some of this out. I've got a sort of low-res screen here. Okay, so I started a new document, blank page. It comes in with a predefined title block. It's also got some layers that I think are worth talking about. Layout's layer system is very much like traditional graphics applications that you're probably accustomed to, like Illustrator or Photoshop or AutoCAD. Layers are sort of like sheets of onion skin laid up one on top of one another, not like SketchUp layers. SketchUp layers is totally different. 3D normal layer system wouldn't work, but these should seem pretty familiar. There's one kink. You can see this template's got 3 layers defined for you. One's called user content, one's called page-specific elements, and one's called same on every page. Who wants to take a stab at what this last layer can do?
Title block. Right.
So some stuff that's on this layer will be, wait for it, same on every page. And then the page-specific elements, anything I put on that layer, these are just predefined layers that came with a template. You can, of course, make your own layers to organize things how you like. But so the first thing that I'm going to do here, I've actually heard this a lot from people. They ask, well, they say that this template is fine, this title block is okay, but that's not my firm's logo, so I can't use this. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is replace the logo. Select it, delete. I'm going to, oh, this is locked. I'm going to go to the same on every page layer and import a graphic. Okay, and I'm just going to use our Basecamp logo here. This could be in a variety of formats. This happens to be a GIF file. It could be a PNG or a JPEG, or if you're on a Mac, it could be an EPS file. So I'm just going to pick this up, drag it up in the corner, scale it to some useful size, using the arrow keys to nudge it around a little bit. Okay, and there we go. So now if I make a new page, provided I did this right, that'll be on the new page. We'll get to that in a second. So that's how you do your logo. Okay, I'm going to switch back to user content, the user content layer. And now I'm going to put a SketchUp model in here. Okay, simple process. Go to File, Insert, and I'm going to pick my SketchUp model. Say Open, and there it is on the page. Okay. Now, once this model has been inserted into my layout document, it behaves just like any other graphical element on the page. I can pick it up and move it around. One nice thing, if you notice when I pull this up off the edge of the page, the background is actually coming in transparent. So if we have time, I'll show you some compositing tricks and things that you can do at the end of this session. But so this is actually, at this point, a rendering of the SketchUp model. It's a bitmap graphic at some resolution, and you set that on a document-wide basis in this release. If I zoom in on this, you'll see eventually the individual pixels in that rendering. Okay? Most people think of SketchUp as a vector application because of the way you draw, right? You're drawing edges and then making faces and all this kind of stuff. But it's actually a raster representation of your vector data all the time, right? So this is the most natural way for us to display a SketchUp model. It has some limitations, which those of you who've tried layout, you've probably run into this. This is one of the rough edges, right? So if you're doing a D-sized sheet, how many Photoshop users do we have in the room? Okay, so do this math in your head, right? D-sized sheet, 20, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, 24 by 36, okay? So 24 by 36 inches at, say, 300 DPI. How big is that image? The Photoshop people in the back, how long does it take to print? 2 days, yeah. More than a cigarette, right? Okay, so layout has that kind of limitation as well because it's a rasterized image. But if you're working on sheets that are, this is like an 11 by 17 sheet. A lot of people have printers that can print 11 by 17 that aren't even architects, right? I mean, it's very easy to get that kind of a printer. So we really focused on documents of that size. You certainly can work bigger, but you'll start to run into performance problems. Okay, so this is a rasterized image of a SketchUp model. I can move it around on the page. I can rotate it, you know, upside down, whatever. I don't know why I would want to do that actually in this particular case. But it's also still the 3D model as well. So if I double click on it, kind of like opening a SketchUp component or group for editing, if I just double click, now I'm actually in the 3D model here on the page, right in context. So I could pick a different view, then click outside the model, and that causes it to render into the page again. Now once these things are rendered, provided you've rendered them at a kind of responsible resolution, they're pretty lightweight, they're pretty easy to move around. So layout can be quite responsive even if you've got some ginormous, huge SketchUp model. Like I talked to a guy yesterday who has a 500 megabyte SketchUp model. Never in my wildest dreams did I think somebody would make a 500 megabyte SketchUp model. There are probably like a dozen of them in this room here right now, right? So it might take a while to render that image because it's a big model, we got to render the whole model. But once it's rendered, it's relatively lightweight and easy to move around on the page. Okay? So for the first page of this document, I'm going to do just a perspective. And so I'll just orbit to a good view here. It's not bad. Make it a little bit bigger because I'm clipping a little bit over here. Okay. Oh, I'm zooming in and out using, well, I'm using a trackpad, but if I had a 3-button mouse, I'd be using the mouse wheel. And it works a lot like SketchUp's zoom. You just put the cursor over the thing you want to get a closer look at, you roll the wheel in, you get a closer look at that thing, okay? If I wanted to look at this note down here, just put the cursor over that, and then zoom in and out, okay? All right, so for this first page, I want to put, oh, I suppose this is important. I'm going to say conceptual design for review only. We really didn't think about this as a tool for doing construction documents. Now, a lot of people are trying to do that. We really thought of it more as a conceptual package where you've got, because that's really where people are most effective, I think, using SketchUp. It's in those early stages in the design process where you're iterating rapidly, you're just kind of working fast and loose. So layout is really intended, again, for that part of the design process, for those presentations that you do, and not for construction documents. People will do construction documents in it, I'm sure, and they have, and been successful at it. But it wasn't really our intention. Okay, so I was just using a thing called the scrapbook. So the scrapbook is, I don't know, maybe it's kind of like SketchUp's component browser. It's a place where you can get pre-drawn collections of geometry to pull into your layout document. Like, in this case, I'm going to grab this drawing title here, and I'll give this a name. This is, I can't spell. And it's not to scale. Okay.
Scale that.
Scale this?
Or is it a fixed size?
It's a perspective.
No, the text.
Oh, the text. Yeah, sure I can. But as I brought it in, like as a block of predefined stuff, I want to keep the style of it intact. So if I can make this a different font. And
if you grab, like, for example, that whole block and modify the size.
Oh, I see.
Would the font basically stay at,
yes,
say, 11 points or whatever?
The font would stay that size. Yep. Yep.
I noticed you dragged in the first thing, for conceptual, on I guess on user content.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be careful about what layer you drag things in on, because you probably want that on the same on every page, right?
I suppose I could do that. Yeah.
Okay. But let's say you want to change it now.
Yeah, okay.
Is that easy to do?
It is. So I just select it. And if you look here, the little red pencil tells you what layer you're currently drawing on. And the little blue-black dot here tells you what layer the current selection is on. So if I wanted to move that and put it on the same on every page layer, I just select that layer, then right-click on this and say Move to Current Layer.
Okay.
Did that work? Yeah.
Because that's real common. It happens to me all the time. I never put things on the right layer, and then I move them to the right layer.
Nobody does. Yeah. Yeah, I did half of my presentation yesterday on the same on every page layer, and then I made a new page, and I was like, oh boy, what happened here?
You did that so you could demonstrate that.
Right. That's exactly it. Yes, I was thinking ahead, and exactly, no, it didn't work that way. Yeah, okay. All right, so labels. So the scrapbook is for collections of pre-drawn stuff. It's also for the style of something pre-drawn, okay? So if I wanted to draw an arrow that kind of fits in with that graphical look for symbols, I can just pick this arrow tool, a label tool, and now when I come over the scrapbook, you can see the cursor changes to an eyedropper. So that means now from the same collection of stuff, I can pick up just the style. So I want an arrow that looks like this one. It's got that leader, and it's got text that's of this font and that size and all those kinds of things, okay? So now when I draw a label, oh, I'm probably not on the right layer. I'm jinxed now. Here we go. Let me get on the right layer. User content again. Okay. So now this leader has that arrow style, and this note has that size and font and all those kinds of things. Okay, so scrapbook is a combination of a collection of style settings and a collection of pre-drawn geometry, because sometimes you want a particular thing like a drawing title, and sometimes you want a style of things like the label. Okay. So.
Is it possible to add to the scrapbook in terms of
Absolutely, yeah. So scrapbook files are just layout documents stored in a special directory. If I wanted to add something to this particular sheet, I can just hit this edit button, and that opens that particular scrapbook as a multi-page document. So, you know, if I wanted to have I don't know what this would be. There's a square there. Just draw that, save the file, and then now it's available as another object that I can pull out of the scrapbook. Okay, so yeah.
Can you hot link those objects from the scrapbook into the document?
So they don't. There's no. I'm supposed to be repeating the question. Sorry. So the question was, can you hot link from the scrapbook to layout? The answer is no. They're not like SketchUp components in that there's not a common definition with multiple instances. That would be cool, though. Yeah, that would be cool. Okay, let me show you a couple more things about, let's see, am I actually in, let's see. Yeah, okay. Let me show you a couple other things about labels. And I'm just going to throw a couple of them in here.
Can you do a multi-line label on that side?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Okay, so this one I just clicked here and drug in this direction. Which way do you think it'll justify?
Well, because of your original style in the example above, sure it's going to justify it to the right.
Okay, so this is some right justified, and it can be on 2 lines. Okay, so actually, if I were to drag in the other direction, this will now be left justified.
What do you want to have arrows
Okay.
going from both sides?
It's just an arrow style setting, and this actually has an arrow head on each side. So it's got something that looks like an arrow here, and it's got something that looks like a dot here. If I bring up the shape style settings here, you can see that I've got arrow styles for the start and end of each one of these lines.
We want
Now-
to have the text in the middle and arrows going both ways. How do I do that?
You draw it by hand. Yeah. So funny story. We have a programmer on the SketchUp team who worked for Bentley originally, and one of the things that he worked on for them was their dimensioning and labeling style system, and he counted 52 different attributes of a label. That labels could have 52, and I don't mean that there were 52 different kinds of labels that you could draw, but there were 52 different attributes on the label. I think that's just kind of too much. So we simplified it. Now, admittedly, there's less power, right? But there are fewer settings that you have to make, and so hopefully you can be faster. You can't change the, we have a preset collection of arrowheads, and there's no way to add new ones. That's it. We did a survey. We got the ones we hope are the right ones. We could add more, but we consciously make sacrifices in layout to make it faster to use, of course at the expense of customization and power. But,
Now, is that arrow like a separate piece of geometry for the text now? Can I edit the text?
you can edit the text. You just double click on it.
If I drag the text, will the arrow go with it?
Usually. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. And also, if I move the model around, the arrows will try their hardest to stay attached to where they belong.
But if you rotate the model, it's not connected that way.
Well, actually, yeah.
I didn't mean to rotate it that way. I meant a double click.
Oh, if I double-clicked and orbited, right? Yeah. No, they wouldn't be connected then. So we're actually just connecting them to a point in the bitmap. If I scaled them, that should work. Why didn't that work? Okay. It's a thing. Okay. Anyhow, so that's labels. Any questions about labels?
Could you copy
Placing
the
it.
arrow?
Yes.
If you wanted to do that double arrow sort of note?
You definitely could. I can just pick it up at any point. I can drag a copy of it by holding down the Option key, just like in SketchUp. I can edit the endpoints of the arrow, so maybe I could have two notes pointing at the same spot, or I guess the other version of that is the same note pointing in two different places.
So is that still linked? Okay.
Cross your fingers. Well, one of them was.
All right.
So ideally, yes, they would retain their linkage. Yeah, another
Is
question.
the style still global so that I could actually change the font right now of all the labels I've already put on? Like, for example, going back to the style section, changing the font there? Or once it's placed on the sheet, is it kind of its own entity at that point?
So the question is, are styles assigned globally or per entity, really? And in our case, it's per entity. So you'd have to select the text, and then you could change all of them at once. If I did actually, I don't want to do that because I'll get my title block too, but if I do a selection, bring up my text picker and change it to Tombstone. This is a great font. I'm going to have to make it bigger so you can see it.
I'll do all my drawings.
Yeah, I'm totally switching too.
That was definitely impressed by.
Well, you know, we're all in Colorado, so this is like home for us. You know, the street signs, in fact, use this font in Colorado. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right. In the back or middle of the back there.
When the labels that you put on in SketchUp, is there any way to, you know, because those ones kind of float with the orbiting model, is there any way to relate those to text on the file? Or, you know, is there any relationship between that and your layout?
Do you mean like, is there any way to attach an arrowhead to a point in the model rather than a point in the drawing of the model? Is that?
So if you annotated your model in SketchUp,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
come over and have a similar function.
Currently, no, but wouldn't that be cool? I think that would be neat. If you have labels, or for that matter, dimensions, in fact, you can see a dimension here. I'll talk more about that in a second. But if you have text or labels or dimensions on your SketchUp model, they will render just fine in layout. And some people choose to do all of their annotation in SketchUp. So yeah, I mean, you can do it either way. Yes, Brett?
Can you change the text to a hand-drawn alphabet?
If you've got one. I have a good one called LeGault, which I think is really good. Let's see. Well, actually, I have a bunch of hand-lettered fonts. This one's mine. That's the way I write. This is my vanity font. But you can totally do that. Gosh, I forget the restrictions. Brian, guys in the back, type, true type fonts. Yes. So any true type or open type font with PostScript outlines can be rendered in layout. And on the Mac, it's basically any font that the OS can handle. All the way in the back by the red column there.
If you dimension your model
Mm-hmm.
and you lay out and then show the different views like the front and the side,
Mm-hmm.
then you got the dimensions showing one view and showing another. Because obviously you go dimension a line with the face, you can rotate it around.
Right. So the question was, how do you show, I guess, only the relevant dimensions to a particular orthographic view, right? Is that?
That's right.
Okay. Maybe I should continue, and I'll show you how to do an orthographic view, and then I'll show you some more of that. And actually, before I do that, I said that I was going to do some minor cheating to make this presentation last for only 30 minutes. And really what that means is I did a lot of homework in my SketchUp model, and I want to talk about that for a second. But I think it's relevant to your question, and it's a recommendation that I would make if you're going to use layout. Doing upfront planning in SketchUp will help you a lot. Okay, so in this SketchUp model, if you look across the top here, I've got a bunch of scenes that I've saved. These scenes represent the views that I know I'm going to want ultimately in layout, and I've done as much work as I can in SketchUp to get them looking like I'm going to want them to look in layout. It saves time. It's a little bit easier to understand, I think, when you're thinking conceptually about whether you're doing work in SketchUp or layout. You're probably accustomed to doing it in SketchUp, so it's a good place to start here. So this, I messed up in yesterday's presentation. This used to be my perspective view. Well, anyway, that was the one that we used at the beginning. Here's my second scene, which is that long section. What I did here was I went to a side view. I took a SketchUp section plane and pushed it into the middle of the gazebo model, and I turned off perspective. Okay? And then I saved that as a scene. I've got a roof plan, orbited to a top view, turned off perspective, so this is going to become an orthographic roof plan. A deck plan, I took a section plane, pushed it down to the middle of the gazebo to make a plan section. And in this case, so that we can talk about the dimensioning, I put some dimensions, and to Fred's question as well, this is my favorite Legault font, again used as a SketchUp dimension font. So I put some dimensions in here, and the way that you control which ones are visible where, there are actually a couple ways to do it. I think in this case, I would just do it explicitly. I would say per scene, you can show and hide entities. In SketchUp, and a dimension string is just a SketchUp entity. So in this particular scene, I have those particular dimensions unhidden, right? When I go to the foundation plan, so here I'm just taking that same section plane, pushing it farther down so that you can see where the foundation for this thing would be, and please no critiques of my structural knowledge or whatnot. So here I didn't hide those dimensions that were visible in the plan before, but they're above the section plane, so you can't see them, so they're effectively hidden. Here's a front elevation, and I don't know if you noticed it when this was orbiting down into this view. There was a section line over here, but that section line, you're actually looking in 3D space. You're looking right down the length of the dimension string, so it's also hidden. And that's the setting in SketchUp. You can have dimensions hidden when they're either too small to be visible or legibly visible, or when they're, I forget exactly what it's called, but when they're viewed on the oblique and they wouldn't be legible either, we can also automatically hide them. So there are a couple of ways to manage which dimension strings are visible and which are not. Somebody out there is now going to ask the question, are there dimensioning tools in Layout? The answer is no, they're not in this release of Layout. Dimensioning has to be done in SketchUp, and there's a decent reason for that. And it's really that in SketchUp you can attach things to the model. So if you want to measure things in model space, which is what a dimension string is doing, you should do that in the model. Okay? And let me just zip through the rest of these. There's my back elevation and my side elevation, okay? So I didn't really do a ton of work in Layout. I just did some thinking about the views I was probably going to want. I've got them all in a consistent style, which is, in this case, it's just black lines, white background. Pretty simple, pretty diagrammatic. I could do other things, but I'm going to stick with that for now, okay? So because I have those scenes saved into this model, let me just make a new page. Oh, I didn't quite get this right. Okay, there's our logo again. If I insert the same model again, and for those of you that are wondering about how we do the housekeeping under the hood, this is now the same model. It's just instanced twice, once on each of these two pages. And we are actually taking the whole SketchUp model and storing it in the layout document, so you don't have to worry about losing references if you move files around in your file system or anything like that. We do retain a pointer back to the original file on disk, so if you change it, we can see those changes update. And I'll show that in a second. But so this is the same SketchUp model again. I'm going to open up my SketchUp model inspector here and look at the properties of this particular model. And I'm going to make this into an orthographic plan view. So what I would do is look in this Scenes menu. I'm going to pick this. So this is a list of all of the scenes that are saved in this SketchUp model. I'm going to pick that deck plan view. Okay, here it is. So now I've got that section plan in place. I can see my dimension strings. I'm orbited to an orthographic projection. And I can now put this to a scale. So to do that, I just come over to this menu and pick a scale. So we have a large collection of presets, possibly too many. I think on Windows we do our best to pick a scale that seems appropriate to you. You can edit this list. If I come down here to custom, I can add or delete scales that I might commonly use. But I'm just going to pick one from the list because I know there's one in there that'll work. If I go to half-inch scale, it's going to re-render the model. And now this is actually scalable at 1/2 inch equals 1 foot. Okay. I'm just going to drag this viewport open a little bit more so that we can see those dimensions. And I don't need this down here, so I can kind of trim that back a little bit. Okay. Right, any questions about that? So this is now a graphically scaled orthographic plan with dimensions on it. Yes?
Is it important to cut down the box so that you don't have a lot of excess rendered material?
It can't hurt. The question was, is it important to cut the box down so you don't have extra bitmap hanging around on the page? Yeah, I mean, can't hurt.
So if you wanted those dimensions to be, like say you were going to double the size of that or shrink it half the size, and you wanted your text to be bigger, would you have to go back to the SketchUp model and change the properties of all those?
You would change the properties of the dimension text, and I believe in SketchUp in SketchUp 6 there's a setting that allows you to fix the size of the text in model space or in screen space. So you would, depending on which one you wanted, you'd pick one or the other, and then that would be respected here. Yes, back in.
Is the line control independent in each of those windows? Like, could you have one layer on in one window and a layer off in another window?
Yeah, you definitely could. And maybe, let me come back to that when I get to my page details, and we'll do a couple of different ones. Okay, there's one other thing I wanted to show here, and that's the, actually let me go back to this perspective view for a second. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a big block sitting right here on this table. And if you look in this plan view, there it is again. And actually, let me just add one more. We'll do a front elevation, and then you'll really be able to see it. So again, I'm just placing the same SketchUp model again. Now I'm going to pick, say, a front elevation, and I'll put that at half-inch scale as well. Make this a little bigger so it's not clipped.
Could you have just copied that viewport from the other page?
I definitely could have. I also could have just duplicated the page and used everything that was on it. I don't know why I did it this way. That just seemed like the thing to do at the time. So yeah, there are multiple ways to do it. So here you can see that block again sitting right here on top of my nice picnic table. So I'm going to get rid of that. And to do that, I'm going to right-click on this model and say Open with SketchUp. So that takes the model from Layout, throws it back to SketchUp. Now I'm in the 3D editor that you all know. I can just triple-click on this thing to select it, delete, save the file, go back to Layout. We'll give it a second. So now it's updated this rendering. It's not in this view. It's not in the plan view anymore. And it's no longer in the perspective. So that worked because I'm going to generate all of my views from a single model. Now you could have multiple models, you could update multiple models, but you can save a lot of time by working all in one 3D model. Okay? So let me just zip ahead and make that page of details now. And let's see how many different ways I can do this. Well, I'll just copy from here because that was the question. So I just selected it on one page, copied it to the clipboard, moved to the next page, paste it from the clipboard, and there it is. So for this sheet, I'm going to check my cheat sheet here to see which details I actually did. That's not terribly lame. Okay, so I just double click on here, and I'm back in the SketchUp model view again. Now for these views, I didn't save SketchUp scenes, so I'm just using SketchUp's camera tools, orbit, pan, and zoom, and I'm doing them from the mouse. They work the same way as they do in SketchUp. And I'm just going to kind of pan around in the view until I find the details that I want to talk more about. Now to do the next one, I can just select this once and then move a copy. Just like in SketchUp, I'm holding down the Option key here. You see the little plus sign next to that move cursor. So now I've made another copy of the same model again. Double click on it. I'm going to pan over here and find another detail to look at. Like, let's see. That'll take a long time. Let me zoom out. So maybe this little bearing plate here is something that I want to talk more about. I can make another copy over here. And we'll come down here and look at this drip. Maybe in this case, a more axonometric view might be more instructional of what that detail might be. Okay. So maybe I'll just kind of pick a couple more views at random down here. So now I just moved 3 of those at once. Let's come down here and look at this thing, whatever that is. And maybe we should try to do a detail of that piece. And I don't know what else. This seat. Okay. So now I've got these 6 little tiny viewports on the page, and I want to kind of get them organized. So Layout has an inference engine that's a lot like SketchUp's. I think it's better because it's the second one that Joe did. Where's Joe? Isn't he here? He's out there? Okay. So we call this in Layout, we call it object snap. There are 2 different kinds of snapping in Layout. Object snap is the one that's the most like SketchUp's inference system, and it does point inferences and on-face inferences and on-edge inferences and from points. Anyway, there's a whole collection of things. I'll show you that in a second. Grid snap is grid snapping. We do that too. So I've got that turned off right now, and I'm just going to use the object snap to sort of get these things all lined up. So I'll put the first corner, the first viewport in the corner, the second one. So what's kind of different about Layout's inference engine is that any point can be made available for inferring alignment from any other point. So here, if you look at this rectangle that I've picked up, that green circle indicates that I've snapped to a corner, in the top corner. That's the same corner again. So there's the bottom corner of that rectangle. There's the bottom right corner. So we're doing a lot more just sort of looking around the thing that you've picked up for possible alignments that might make sense. So I'm spending more time on this than I actually would. Once you've used it, just like in SketchUp, once you've used it for just a few minutes, it starts to feel pretty natural. Okay, so here I'm just lining these up underneath the objects above. So this one is directly down from that corner and directly across from the top edge of this one. Okay, I think you get the idea. Where's that point? Drag straight down, okay?
You haven't scaled any of those yet, though.
I haven't, so I could do that now. I don't really know what scale is going to work. Maybe 3-inch? No. Well, 3/4 inch, you think?
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I think I lost it out in space somewhere. Yeah.
Does it know to center it in the view that you've got there, or?
It does its best. There are some pathological.
Didn't quite make it that time with it.
Right. It is closer to 1-to-1, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a really tiny detail.
Yeah, it is.
Huh.
It's smaller than anyone on the list.
It is smaller than anyone on the list. Why don't I just say that we could scale each one of these, and you saw me do that before. Yeah, the only requirement for scaling is that it doesn't have perspective turned on. You can't scale a perspective, right? Yeah, I don't know what this one is. So it should try to fit what was visible inside the viewport. Yeah. It's tough because these are so small. Yeah. Let me keep moving. So there was a question about different rendering styles per instance of a model, right? You can totally do that. I'm just going to go back to the SketchUp model inspector. I've selected this model. I'm going to click to the Styles tab, and I've got, in this case, this is a collection of styles that were saved in the model. So these are the, if I go back to SketchUp and I look at styles, these are the styles that were saved in the model. I can use any of the styles that I have saved on disk, but just for convenience, I'm going to use these. So there's, let's see, whose Sharpie is that? That's just a Sharpie. I think that's Aiden's Sharpie, actually. Here's one with a nice thick profiles. Here's one that's just a colored diagrammatic representation. I've got a little bit of extension turned onto the edges. Here's another of Aiden's styles. Here's one that, can you guys see that? That's pretty light. Okay. It's non-print, right? It's not non-project. Okay. So anyway, these are all 6 instances of the same SketchUp model, but they have different views and different styles in each one of them.
Determines what styles are in that filter list. You have to set the style in the SketchUp?
In this case, this is the in-model style, so these are the ones that were saved in the SketchUp model. I can use any of the collections of styles that I have on my disk as well. It uses the same directory of styles that SketchUp uses. So, you know, I could make this our blueprint style. This could be standard CAD. So you can use any of the styles that you have. Okay. There's a difference, though, when you're rendering in layout. And this is another thing that people stumble over all the time. Those of you who are accustomed to rendering line work in Photoshop are probably already aware of the kinds of problems that, or the kinds of opportunities that you can have with SketchUp renderings in layout. In SketchUp, who knows what the thinnest line that you can render in SketchUp is? Who said it? I heard it. 1 pixel. That's right, 1 pixel. You can't render a line that's less than a pixel in SketchUp because you're rendering to the screen, and your screen only represents the smallest thing you can draw as a pixel. However, when you go to layout, you're actually rendering onto a page at kind of arbitrary resolution, right? So you might print it, and get one resolution. You might look at it on your screen and get a different resolution. You could export it to a PDF file and have kind of a different resolution again. So what you have to do is map that thinnest possible line weight in SketchUp to some analog in layout. So by convention, we use points to define how thick a line can be. Who knows how thick 1 point is?
1/72 of an inch?
1/72 of an inch, right. And by coincidence, well, not by coincidence, most Macintosh computers have displays that are 72 dots per inch because each pixel represents about a printer's point. Windows PCs, and actually Macs are off this now anyway, so all bets are off, right? But Most Windows PCs are about 96 dots per inch. Actually, I shouldn't even say that anymore. That's totally untrue. They could be anything. So there's a setting in the SketchUp model inspector here. And let me pick something like this one. So here, the white lines here are 1 pixel lines, right? There's a setting down at the bottom of this inspector called line weight. Line weight is where you define how many points you're going to render per pixel, okay? Or how big each pixel is going to be in page space. So right now, line weight is set for this model to 1. So that means a 1 pixel line in SketchUp is going to be drawn as a 1 point line in LayOut. Most people think that looks a little thick. So I recommend setting it to 0.5 or 0.7 or something around in there. And it'll just make your drawing, it'll make the line work sort of tighten up in the drawing, okay? Let's try 0.7 for this one. Yeah, pretty subtle difference. Okay, so that's not the whole story though, unfortunately. A 1 pixel line, so it depends actually on the number of pixels that you have available in this bitmap to work with, right? So let's look at another setting. If I go to Document Setup, and if I could make this simpler, I would. So if you look at the paper settings for this document, there's a setting down here called Rendering Resolution for SketchUp Models, and currently it's set to 150 dots per inch, okay? We have some presets here that you can choose between, 300 or 72. Oh, this is going to take a minute, which takes me to my next point. Okay, let's go back to 72. All right, so if I have models on the page rendered, yeah, okay. I think that went well. Let's relaunch. I can use this as an opportunity to show you our excellent recovered file feature.
What an opportunity.
So if you crash, we will make every attempt to save the document that you were working on. And this is totally going to work. There it is. Okay. You're right. I mean, who hasn't had it crash in public in front of a room full of people? Okay, so I was just talking so interestingly about rendering resolution. Okay, so if I set this to 72 dpi, okay, so if I'm rendered at 72 dpi, what's the thinnest line that I will be able to draw in LayOut? It's after lunch. 1 point, right, 1/72 of an inch. You can't draw anything thinner than that. So even if I were to go to the styles here, set this down to 0.5, looks the same, right? Because I've still got to render something for each line, so it's still going to be it's going to be the thinnest possible line. So in this case, 1 point, okay? So if I go back here and I set this to, say, 150 dots per inch, now this can be thinner, right? Because a 1/2 point line can be rendered at 150 dpi. Okay, you guys are great. You bore with me through this. It's incredibly complicated and totally counterintuitive. But it's unfortunately something we have to deal with in LayOut. Yes, question?
Is it smart to work at a low resolution and when you're ready to print, ramp it up?
It's absolute. So the question is it smart to work at a low resolution and then ramp it up when you're ready to print? Yes. Yes, that's the best possible thing to do. And I actually recommend that for new documents, come in here and set it as low as you can tolerate it. As long as you don't need to line something up precisely with a point in your SketchUp, the rendered SketchUp view, it doesn't really matter what resolution you're rendered at while you're working. And if you render at a low resolution, then you have a lot less data to push around on the page. If you rendered each one of these things at 600 dpi or something like that, this is just going to be a much heavier page. LayOut will feel a lot less responsive. It'll lag and jitter and kind of chug along. And then when you're ready to print, knock it up to whatever resolution you think you need to print at. Now, what resolution do you need to print at?
600 or whatever.
300.
I would never go higher than 300 dpi. I would never go higher than 300 dpi. If you're doing, so the hardest thing to render in a bitmap is going to be a black line on a white background that's diagonal, okay? If you have, now think about Photoshop users in the back, help me with the numbers again. I've got a D-sized sheet at 600 dpi, and I've got a plan that's this big, okay? How long is that going to take to print? We're not talking 2 days now, we're like a week, if you don't crash the printer. Work at as low a resolution as you can stand. And most of the time, people aren't looking at your drawings this far away from it, and they can't actually see the stair steps that you're going to inevitably get in a raster image of a diagonal line. So I recommend never go higher than 300 dpi. 150 is actually pretty good in most cases. And in fact, I think in the first beta release of LayOut, we let this go to 600. And of course, people immediately complained LayOut was really slow because everybody pegged it at 600 dpi. And yeah, the bitmaps were just huge. So we knocked it down to 300. That's the maximum you can do. It should be enough. It should be enough. It is going to mean that large sheets are pretty hard to do in LayOut as it exists today. But for these tabloid size presentations, you should be able to get pretty good results out of it.
It'd be a nice feature to have when you go to print it, to just change it to print.
That would be a nice feature. Yeah. We laughed. Okay. So I think that's my full discussion of line weight, resolution. Did I lose anybody? I'm sure I lost somebody. That's confusing stuff. Are there any questions about that? Yeah.
Could you set up some sort of script that would just take care of that would just automatically get you into one or the other and call print script or work script, and so you don't even think about it?
I think that would be really cool to do. Yeah.
Is there anything to automate updating the other elements in the title block, such as page number or?
Unfortunately, no. Which ones would you want to automate?
Well, I would just assume that the page number would be
Right.
something that would automate, and then if there's other, like the titles, if you only have a single, drawing on screen, then maybe the title will come across as well.
Right.
Things of that nature.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. It doesn't work that way now, though. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Could I add more? If you wanted to, for example, add, say, insulation to that piece there, could I draw something two-dimensionally on the sheet? So I want to put that on the model.
Yep.
Is there?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me take us back to let's see here. Oh, I don't have that one open anymore. Let me just take us back to my, like Julia Childs. I will reach under the counter and pull out the finished roast. Okay.
Not the one that dropped on the floor.
Not the one that dropped on the floor. I think I've already dropped LayOut on the floor once in this.
You did very well, John.
But let me skip ahead to this elevation, okay? So I didn't properly introduce this project here. This is a gazebo that it's got this foot pedal down here. When you step on the foot pedal, it makes the roof flap. I'm totally going to build this one day. I've been saying that for, I don't know, 3 years now or something. But there's some diagrammatic drawing that I've done in there that isn't in the model and shouldn't be in the model. So these dashed lines representing, where the maximum and minimum of the swing of the flap would be, those are all drawn in LayOut using LayOut's drawing tools. And I can do a quick little run through of what those tools are. And I'm going to use that object snap inference system again. And I'll just run across this tool section of the toolbar really fast. There's a line tool, which is an awful lot like SketchUp's line tool. When I'm drawing vertically, it snaps, the line turns green. When I'm drawing horizontally, it snaps, the line turns red. It's kind of hard to look up there. Okay, so there's a from point in that axis. So this should feel a lot like SketchUp. When I click here in the last corner, then line drawing stops, and this is effectively a rectangle, okay? I can get from point inferences, a lot like SketchUp. Okay, so that's Layout's line tool. We have an arc tool. So this is a radius angle arc. We have a couple of different kinds of arcs. This is just the one that goes on the toolbar by default. Here's a rectangle. All of these can use the same inference system that the pencil tool was using. Okay. We have a circle tool for drawing squares. And a polygon tool, which I can tell it how many sides I want. Say 3 sides will give me a triangle, or 6 sides will give me a thing with 6 sides. Okay. If I customize this toolbar, you can see the full collection of tools that we have available in Layout, and it looks like a lot. We actually have more kinds of drawing, more styles of drawing tools than we have in SketchUp. So if you look at the arcs, there's actually a radius angle arc, a 3-point arc, what we call 2-point arc, which is really like SketchUp's. It's you set the chord and then the bulge of the arc. Freehand tool, ellipses, rounded rectangles, all different kinds of things. So there's a pretty rich palette of 2D drawing tools available to you for doing those diagrammatic kinds of markup. Okay.
How do you handle line weights in any of that?
Well, let me take you back to the scrapbook. So this one that I was using before that had these symbols in it, I've also got a collection of standard line weights assigned in it. So if I were to draw some rectangles, and let's say I wanted to draw a 1.4 millimeter line, I just come over here, look for the eyedropper, pick up that line weight. Now I'm drawing a thick line. Here's a 1.8 millimeter line. Okay.
Do those have any intelligence? Can I change them later, or do I draw on top of them?
You can, and you use the shape style inspector for doing that. So if I selected these 2 rectangles, I could say that I'd actually like them to be 5-point lines, or maybe 1-point lines that are dashed. Yeah, those are dashed. Okay. I can assign a fill or a fill color to those. Okay. So vector shapes that are drawn in Layout are, yeah, you can set fill, stroke, fill color, stroke color. Fills can be translucent if you want. Kind of a nice effect. Okay. They can have dashed outlines. They can have arrowheads. So those are all the basic attributes of Layout vector geometry. So here's a line, and I could give it an arrow at each end. I could make those arrows bigger or smaller. Okay.
Now, when you did the call-outs, those were tied into the actual model. This looks like more of a paper type thing where it's just on the surface on a particular layer.
That's right.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So think of this as, you're going to use these tools to draw title blocks, or to draw diagrammatic elements, or to just draw 2D things. Yeah.
Is there a cloud symbol for revisions?
No. That'd be cool, though. Oh, sorry, the question was, is there a cloud symbol? We didn't ship one in the scrapbooks, but you could certainly make one. Oh, actually, I should probably use this other arc tool. Let's see. Maybe this one. Okay, whoops. Well, all right, so not the greatest cloud, but we don't have a dedicated cloud tool, and we may not actually. All the way in the back.
Can you use the polygons, the rectangles that you draw? Can you use those as clipping elements for the drawings that you're bringing in?
You sure can, and actually even better, you can use them. Yeah, let's see here. And I think actually, am I about out of time? 10 minutes, okay, good. All right. So let me use this freehand tool, and I'm going to just draw a freehand shape on top of this SketchUp model. So I can I select that shape, select the model behind it, right-click, and create a clipping mask. Okay, so now there's the clipped model. If I want to edit that, I just double-click on it. Now I can change which part of the model is going to be clipped. Okay, or I can double-click and then double-click again, and now I'm inside the SketchUp model. Okay, and then I click outside once, cross my fingers, okay, click outside again, and now that's back inside the clipping mask.
Is it possible to show the line on the boundary?
Sure, yeah, I'm just going to pick that clipping mask and give it a stroke. Okay, and I could make that, some color, could make it fatter, and dashed, or whatever. So it's just a sketch or a layout vector entity. Yes.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
When you can reference a SketchUp model, and then you can reference the actual scenes that you've saved in the model. Have you thought about, or do you have plans to add the ability to reference the actual animations between scenes? Because I could see that you could create almost kind of an interactive storyboard type tool. It would be very good for film and previews. Yeah,
yeah. Aiden's been leaning on me. So the question was, can we reference animations from SketchUp in Layout? Aiden's been leaning on me to do that for a while. I think it would be really cool.
Full screen.
Let's go to full screen mode, and I'll show you, how close we can get. Just get back to the beginning here. Okay. So I'm going to click on this, go back to full screen mode. All right. So when I'm here, now this is what I was using at the beginning. I can use the arrow keys to advance forward and backward in my presentation. Or I can double click on any model, and then I'm in the 3D view. So if you're doing a presentation, and you're showing them what it looks like from the front, if somebody says, well, I want to know what it looks like from the back, you can do that even if you haven't planned that view explicitly. And while I'm in here as well, if I've got scenes, I could play an animation while I'm doing the presentation. But what I can't do is key the scenes in SketchUp to pages in Layout, which, would probably be pretty sweet.
Could you actually change or switch layers on and off while you're in SketchUp model like this?
So the question is, can you turn layers on and off while you're in the SketchUp model like this? We don't have layer setting or layer controls in the context menu here. And anybody who's heard me talk about layers in SketchUp before knows that I don't think you should use layers in SketchUp. They're not what you think. But your animation totally could. So layer visibility is one of the things that can be saved on a per scene basis. So you could just say that, as you're animating from scene to scene, you could be showing and hiding layers automatically.
When you apply the transparency to the vector shape,
Mm-hmm.
can you do a graduated transparency, or is it just flat?
So the question was, can we do gradients in Layout? And unfortunately, no. We can't do gradients in Layout as it exists now. But yes, that would be cool. Yes?
You said the wings on that flip up and down.
Uh-huh.
Could you have an animation of that happening in this as well?
Using this kind of system, I could. And the way I would do it is I'd have a scene saved with, so I'd have multiple copies of the wings at each of their various orientations, and then per scene I would show and hide the relevant one. So I'd show only one in scene 1, and then only this one in scene 2, and only right. And then as I played that as an animation, you could see it sort of flap.
Can you smooth that then so that can you smooth between them so that it looks?
Sort of. So SketchUp's not really an animation package, but there are. It's capable of doing animation. We've never really built a good UI for it. There are Ruby scripts that will help with that. We've written some Ruby scripts that would help with that as well, but it's not really an animation tool at this point.
I'm guessing
Yes?
you can import other images, JPEGs and things into layout and show alongside a SketchUp?
Yeah, you definitely can. That's how I did the logo up there, and we accept the usual pantheon of formats: PNGs, GIFs. Do we do GIF on Windows? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. PNGs, GIFs, JPEGs, TIFFs. I don't know. What else do you need? Not fair. That's not a raster file. So if you want to bring AutoCAD files in, you could of course load them in SketchUp, save them as SketchUp models, and place those. But it's not going to be the most satisfying solution.
Could you load a PDF of the AutoCAD drawing into this?
It won't be a terribly satisfying solution. It will, actually on the Mac, if you insert a PDF file, I think you get vectors out of it, don't you? It rasterizes? Okay, yeah, so it's going to rasterize. Yeah, I mean, it's not a feature that we're really supporting in layout right now. Yeah. Yes?
Is layout still only available in the Pro version?
Yes, layout is still only in the Pro. It's to run layout, you have to have a Pro license. Yep. It seemed like something that was most relevant to professional designers who can get the Pro license for peanuts. Yeah. Pistachio nuts, maybe, but yeah.
And then why did you detail one end of the hinge with its pointed, the golden point there, and
Yeah.
not the other one?
Yeah. We weren't going to talk about my design.
That's the beat. You know, that's what happens. That's the head there.
I'm going to work that out in the field.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you go back to your sort of final presentation when you had a bunch of other graphic elements thrown in there?
This one?
No, you didn't. You had a child.
Oh, right. Sorry. Let's see.
Child one.
Yeah, this one.
You had pages that seemed to have other color elements and things on it.
First page.
Butterfly.
Butterflies. Right. I drew those with layouts line tools, or in this case, we have a Bezier curve tool. I use that to draw these. They're just translucent fills on the shapes.
Are all those trees in the model, or are they another?
They're actually in the sheet here. Yeah, these are layout vectors. They're actually in one of our standard scrapbooks. They're in the scale trees elevation. Yeah. So we have some things that are in the standard kit here that are entourage type things. And actually, I should show you this one. The butterflies I drew custom for this.
Can you guarantee those in the final design?
That they'll be butterflies? I can guarantee that they will be in the final document. So here are some scale people like Brian. Brian's in the back. Wave Brian. Yeah. And Jeff.
Can you make them wave on screen?
No, I can't make them wave on screen, but if Jeff stands up and puts his hands in his pockets, it's uncanny how close this is.
There's that little
There
Brian.
it is. Yeah, but you need the nose to kind of really catch it, you know.
Yeah.
Without
John, that little browser for your components or whatever you want to call it seems really cool. Has there ever been consideration doing it like that in SketchUp, where you could see, like, seeing it as a little group of people is so much more space efficient than you know, Google browsers or whatever.
I think that would be cool.
That's his stock here. Get that on recording, just so
Yeah.
play it back whenever we need to hear that.
So you can also do things like, you know, I think when we originally designed this scrapbook, we wanted it to be, I mean, there's always some collection of common elements that you're sharing between members of a team that are working on the same project. You know, like material boards are always this thing that sits to the side of everything that you're working on, and you want to be able to sample, you know, the color of that pink marble and the you know, the color of the wallpaper and the, you know, all of those different kinds of things. So the idea was that you could use Scrapbook for that purpose. And I think there's some value in being able to kind of arrange the page. You're sort of designing a user interface for yourself inside of this scrapbook just by putting, you know, if something's more important, maybe you want to make it bigger. If it's less important, you want to make it smaller. I mean, things like that can really have, I think, a big impact on.
If you have the time, could you show how you would do like a red line if you were passing on to another colleague to mark it out?
Yeah, actually, you can do this. So while you're in presentation, you can do things like we've got a little markup tool built in, which I'm not going to try to write anything on my trackpad here. But I think you get the idea. I'll draw an arrow. And then when I exit from here, I can save those annotations into another layer in the same document, and it'll be date stamped. So that's the closest we have to managing red lines currently. Red Sharpie on a piece of paper is still pretty hard to beat for markup. All the way in the back?
With the people and the trees and stuff that you bring in, do they change size depending on the scale of the reference?
No. So the question was, do the scale people change size relative to referenced models? And they don't. You have to use them visually. Unfortunately, yeah. So once you're in paper space, you're working in the dimension of things on the piece of paper. Now we do have, you know, sort of preset things like here's some scale cars. If you have a drawing which is 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, then these will be in scale for that drawing. And we have, you know, different variations on those. Here's the 3/16 version, the 1/8 inch version, the 1/16 inch version. I think we have some metric versions of these in there as well. But it's also worth mentioning, these are actually drawn differently for different scales as well. I mean, that's an easy thing to gloss over, but you don't necessarily want the same detail in a 1/2 inch drawing as you have in a 1/16 inch drawing.
Oh, that one, yeah, okay.
Let's see, any other questions? Let me show one last thing. No, we're over? No time. I'll show one last thing somewhere else. So thanks very much for your attention.